Alright, this is going to be a little quickie about valves and clearance and valve shims and all that. Most of today's high performance dirt bikes, street bikes, ATVs, side-by-sides, whatever, have what we call shim under bucket. I've got these shims in place. That's the valve. That's the very tip of the valve stem right there, and the keepers. And then the shim, what you change when you change clearance. See, that's 2.45 millimeter. I convert them to thousandths because I've done thousandths my whole life and done machine work, yada yada. It just fits down in there. And then the bucket, just goes down over it. And sometimes they're pretty picky to get in there because it's pretty tight tolerances. So there's the bucket, and here's the cam, and here's the lobe right here. This is the intake. This is a Cannondale 440 if you're wondering. This is the intake lobe. As the cam spins, that lobe pushes on this, and of course it opens and closes the valve. Notoriously, the intake valves on any of this stuff, whether it's rocker arms, shim under bucket like this one is, a dirt bike, a street bike, it don't matter. Normally what needs attention is the intake valves tighten up, which means, let me see if I can find a, and you know, you got a million old valves when you're looking for something else, and when you look for it and you can't find it. Here's one. I mean, this valve will work, but anyway, if you imagine this valve being in the head, the cam's going down. I'll try to get still here. It's pushing it down. The cam pushes it, opens it. Either exhaust or intake either goes in or out, up and down, up and down. It's like 80 times per second, something like that. But you can figure out like a 10,000 RPM crotch rocket, 10,000 revolutions per minute. Okay, we figure out how many times that is per second, and then half it, and that's how fast your valves are moving. So yeah, they're boogieing. They're hauling ass, ladies and gentlemen. Anyway, what happens? This going up and down. In time, it literally, when it's coming back up due to these tight valve springs, it hammers itself up into the head. Higher and higher. I'm being very dramatic. But it just keeps closing and hammering up, pulling itself up into the head. And these get tight. So now and then, when you need to service it, the mechanic puts a feeler gauge between the cam right here and the bucket right here. He puts a feeler gauge in there with it at top dead center. And for example, like if the intake is 6 thousandths and the exhaust is 15 thousandths, with the engine code and the top dead center, let's say this is 8 thousandths, just to be saying clearance is what the book is. Well, it'll be like, it'll actually be like, it'll be something like 9 thousandths to 11 thousandths. There'll be a window there, 9 to 11. So if you stick a feeler gauge in there and 9 thousandths won't go, it's too tight because the valve's pulled up. So then when you re-shim them, of course, you always shim it to the big side. If the clearance is between 9 and 11 thousandths, put it on 11 thousandths. Or if you can't get it just right, 12 will work, okay? 1 thousandths bigger is fine. And that gives you more room for it to wear before it's got to be adjusted again. I see these motorcycles, four-wheelers, three-wheelers, dirt bikes, street bikes, whatever. They come in, I service them, check them out, check the valves, they're tight, I adjust it, and the customer a few days after he picks it up will call me and say, my God, what'd you do? This thing's never run like this, it's a rocket. Well, what happens, it gets so tight, it'll get so tight, it'll get to where it actually holds itself open. So compression is leaking past here like it's staying open. So your compression leaks and you slowly lose power and you don't even know it. And then yeah, when they get bad, after a few adjustments, it gets to where the valves get hammered out and they won't seal and you can't adjust them because you get to the thinnest shim they make, and that's still too thick. So you got to come out and shave some off the valve, or the correct thing to do is just put new valves in it. Recut the seats as needed, new valves. Then you get moved back down again, and yeah, you start all over. You ride it in time, you service it, and your mechanic puts in a little bit thinner shims. Later on, a little bit thinner shims, a little bit thinner shims, a little bit thinner shims, and it gets to where, yeah, you need a valve job again. So it's a very simple idea. That's how it works. As they wear, they hammer they're what we call hammer up into the head. And the valves will get hammered to where they're kind of cupped and funny looking. They're not, instead of a perfect 45 here, they'll be all weird looking, kind of like this, you know, where they're just literally hammered themselves in. But that's what it's all about. If you have questions, holler. I'll answer them. I've been doing this, I'm 59. I've been rebuilding these motors my whole life, it seems like. since about, I guess about 76, something around in there, is when I actually started helping rebuild my race bikes back then, and I learned from all that. Anyway, Merry Christmas. Drink a lot of water. All right, this is Geezer Moto in Texas.